Hey. Welcome to Celebrity Interviews with Paul. I have with me today Dana Hall. Dana is a retired Senior Associate Director of Athletics at the University of Mary Washington, my alma mater, Fredericksburg, Virginia. There she was before she was in administration, she was also the coach of the women's field hockey and women's lacrosse teams. She went to a couple of Final Fours with them, lost in the finals a couple of times, and also taught some sports psychology classes, co-taught with Dr. Debra Steckler, and won Coach of the Year awards, National Coach of the Year awards. It is a joy and pleasure. Welcome, Dana Hall.
Thank you so much, Paul. Let me tell you, it's exciting to see you and reminisce about the good old days back at Mary Wash.
Absolutely, absolutely. So how's life in the pandemic for you these days?
I've since retiring in this past summer, I spent quite a bit of time at Fenwick Island, Delaware, at the beach, and
nice.
Let me say it was very quiet, and I was very secluded, and listening to the waves and working on some special projects. I'm okay. I miss interacting with the student athletes and the people, but I think right now with the pandemic, I enjoyed being at the beach and having those opportunities to walk and so forth. So
yeah, good. Well, I'm glad you're staying safe and staying healthy. So you, as we were talking before we started recording, when you inherited the program, the women's lacrosse program at Mary Washington, you inherited a collection of athletes who were more interested in the party aspect of being a student athlete than in the athletic part of things. So how did you take like the known party team on campus and transform them into a team that's competing for national championships?
Well, let me just paraphrase that a little bit. They were allowed to drink. It was a drinking age at that time was 18. So yeah, they had a good time and they interacted with each other and, but the skill level at the highest level to compete on the national level at NCAA's wasn't there. And I think part of it was, Mary Washington was a state school, Virginia State School. And in Virginia, a lot of the girls did not have the opportunity to play lacrosse. So the team was made up of soccer players and field hockey players and basketball players and, roommates and friends like that. I remember, my very first year, we were trying to get roommates of players on the team just to fill a squad. So I was at the dining hall shaking the bushes and looking for tall women and, girls who could carry themselves. And my very first All-American in lacrosse was a soccer player.
Okay. Okay. So once you start there, but how do you build that? What do you do to, is it about, part of it's about recruiting and replacing players. But what is it about, like, how do you get them to a mindset where we're going to actually win games and compete?
I think it's about educating them. And one of the things that I started with was trying to change the culture about, when you walk inside the fences, you are here to work hard and do it again and do it right. And, practice is about practice perfectly. You have to fail in order to be successful. And so, I pushed them hard but I also educated them. And I really feel like teaching them about nutrition, teaching them about their bodies, taking them into the weight room, which none of them had ever lifted a weight. And
sure.
And you and I can talk about that later about, how the track team as well benefited from some of the research that I was doing at the graduate level down at UVA. But, so I taught them about, eating properly, and I analyzed their diets, and I made sure that they were getting the right nutrients for their bodies. So, our number one rule was there was no soda during season. They didn't drink soda, let alone alcohol.
Well, and that was you're talking about like the 80s and 90s, and that's all we drank in the 80s and 90s is soda.
Right, right. So just getting them to understand that soda was a dehydrant, and so caffeine, you know, that is a diuretic. And so, you know, for the field hockey team, you're practicing in 90, 100-degree weather in August.
Right.
In order for their bodies to perform, they have to be hydrated. And so just getting them to understand about how their bodies worked in extreme temperatures like that, let alone physical, activities.
Can you think of like, was there like a moment when you saw like somebody actually get it, or like when it all kind of came together in an instant?
Yeah, their aha moments.
Yeah.
It was, you know, probably, you know, I would, every 20 or so minutes, we would be doing water breaks, and they're like, God, coach, we got to go to the bathroom, you know? And I'm like, no, if your body's working, if your body is working, your body needs the water, the muscles will burn it off. You don't have to go to the bathroom. And it was finally when, you know, they started to understand physiologically how their bodies were working, you know, that it was, you know, that it snapped, it got them here. When they had to go to the bathroom 15 times before a game, that was anxiousness. That was, you know, that was something totally different. And we talked about, you know, mental rehearsal and mental training. That's about keeping the butterflies flying in formation. They're there pre-game, but you know, you control that. You don't have to go to the bathroom. That's just your anxiousness right now. And so, you know, there was a lot of different teaching moments. Every day was a teaching moment on the field and off the field.
Now you made it to the Final Fours a couple of times, 3 times, I understand, between lacrosse and field hockey. Never won the national championship, but finished runner-up a couple. And so what would have been that one? Is there something that you think, if only we could have gotten us kind of over the top? Or looking back, do you think that is this like a sort of like we got what we could out of what we had?
I think that's it. I'm so thankful that we got to the Final Four. I mean, if you take, you know, the first one in field hockey, you know, our very first time playing on AstroTurf was at at Trenton State, which is now college in New Jersey. And that was my second year coaching. We got a bid to go to the Nationals. You know, Mary Wash had never been to NCAAs. And we got it. We went to NCAAs, and they're on the field, and we're playing Trenton, and they're on their AstroTurf. You know, we've never even seen a carpet before. You know, our field was grass. And so, you know, I did all I could to learn about turf techniques, you know, in a week before we got there. And one of the things that I had learned was that, you know, there's this style called ramping where they'd smash the ball into a circle, and their forwards would angle their stick so that the ball would hit and go up into the air. Well, I had no idea how do I teach my players to defend themselves. And in the first 10 minutes of the game, my center forward, my center midfielder had eye lacerations from balls hitting them in the face. So they were in an ambulance off, you know, and off we went. I think we lost 5-1 that game. And, you know, that was our very first experience at Nationals. 2 years later, to make the story go full circle, we're hosting the NCAA National Championships at Mary Washington on grass. And our semifinal game is Trenton, the team that annihilated us on grass. And we beat them to go forward to the national championship the next day in finals. So full circle, it was a real learning experience. And, you know, in the sport of field hockey, the surfaces played such a huge role. You could play on a cow pasture, you know, the grass was 3 inches thick and you couldn't do anything with the ball. Or you could play on a carpet and it was rolling every which way, and they, you know, so, and then, you know, you have these infills with black little pellets and sand that would adhere to the ball and fly everywhere. So I think preparing yourself for situations was an important part of coaching and learning all that I could on the different surfaces and so forth. So,
absolutely.
That was probably, with field hockey, one of the biggest things was just learning how to, and not only learning it, but day-to-day practices. We didn't have turf to practice on. So,
sure. Well, and then you get your team into a situation where they've never experienced this situation before as a team at that level. And suddenly you have to adapt. You have to manage their anxiety in the midst of managing your own anxiety.
Right.
Because you don't want to like make them crazy by your own kind of like, oh my gosh, how am I going to deal with AstroTurf all of a sudden?
Right. Well, and so I did a lot of mental rehearsal. We did stress relief. We did breathing exercises. I did relaxation exercises. Across 20 some years of coaching, depending on situations, there's sometimes, and we can talk about this if you want to know about, what do you do as a coach? Do you fire your team up at the beginning of a game? Well, some of the kids are already so fired up, it takes them over the edge.
Right.
So you got to pull them down and relax them. So, what do you do? What messages do you do at a timeout? We used to practice timeouts at practice.
Okay.
And I'd have 45 seconds to get a message across. How am I going to get it across? Do I have to bring this group down? Do I have to raise this group up? Right. And I can remember, I think some of the funniest.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and sometimes it was, making
some of the funniest moments in the huddle
were me telling a joke and making them relax or laugh. Sure. Because they were so uptight, their muscles were tense, they were swinging and whiffing, and so, and I can remember after numerous games, we'd have tailgates and the parents would say, what in the world did you say in that timeout that made, such a difference? Because the team was a different team after that timeout, or,
Yeah. My pet peeve watching soccer, like my boys have all played soccer, and my pet peeve watching some of their coaches is it felt like so often they coached backwards. So like, the kid has made a mistake and the kid is at a level where they know the mistake they made, but the coach's instruction is to yell at them for the mistake they just made, not to coach them forward into like what the next play is going to be, because the ball's still rolling someplace, and that was always my thing, was like, and I think part of it tells you the level of coaching they were receiving and what they were doing, but it drove me nuts watching them. And I'm like, the kid knew he was out of position. How about you help him get in position next time or make the next play? Because he's not leaving the field yet,
I think, another educational aspect of it is working with the parents. And my very first game every season, I took the officials. I asked the officials to go over into the stands, and thankfully I had a good relationship with officials. Yeah. But they would go over in the stands and they would bring both sets of parents together, and they would say, "Okay, here's the new rules, for this year." And so they do a little, and this one particular official, she would say to him, "Now look, guys, I do have glasses, and sometimes they don't work, so I might not." Catch every call. So don't hound me. I mean, she was a little comedic about it, but by developing that sense of relationship, I wanted my parents to respect officials and their calls. If anybody was going to make a question of the calls, it was going to be me. I would be the one. I didn't want my parents to be, so ridiculous in the stands. And now as I sit in the stands as a grandmother watching my granddaughter play, wow. But I think teaching parents what's appropriate to say and not say in the game of field hockey, you don't say hit them. They're carrying sticks. It's just not appropriate.
So you looking back, I assume you've know some of your athletes as they've graduated college and have gone on to other things. what difference do you think playing on some of those teams and being part of that athletic experience, what difference do you think that made in their lives? And how do you think it impacts them today?
I think so many of the women that have graduated have gone back and given back to sport. For example, so many of them are coaches, or they're officials, or, you know, they're the Pee Wee League in their town, or they've started a Pee Wee League or developmental program of field hockey and or lacrosse. So, you know, at the highest level, you know, one of my alums right now is an international lacrosse official and does games all around the world. You know, and so they're at the collegiate level, they're officiating at the high school and the middle school level, but they're also coaching. And I think that as they're sharing their love of the game and, you know, with the younger generation, that's what's going to keep the sport alive, and hopefully have women coaching women so that young girls have role models that are teaching them the spirit of the game, not only the strategies and the love of the game, but the spirit of the game. And I think that that's been lost a lot in today's culture. Not anything against men, but male lacrosse players, the game of lacrosse is different than women's lacrosse.
The women certainly don't wear the helmet, the style helmet and padding that the men do.
But we have a lot of men coaches who are teaching techniques that they did as a male that, you know, it's not the game. It's not the spirit of the game. So where do you find joy these days? Well, I have two beautiful daughters, you know that, and they have both of them are married and have, my oldest daughter has two children, two daughters. One will be a freshman next year at Towson, playing for one of my alumni who's the head coach at Towson. So awesome. I can't wait to road trip and be the grill master on the tailgate and totally turn 180 around and, you know, be there in the stands for her. All of my grandchildren, they're her youngest. Sherry's youngest is plays field hockey and also softball. So, you know, I'm a spectator in the stands. My youngest daughter and her husband live in Maine. And so the winter sports for them, figure skating and ice skating. And little Patrick has picked up the ice hockey stick. And so, you know, they have 4 children, and I thoroughly enjoy being a nana to my children. So
good for you. Well, thank you so much, Danny. Thank you for your time. Blessings to you, and thank you for being part of Celebrity Interviews with Paul.
Well, thank you, Paul, and well wishes. Happy holidays to you and your family.
Absolutely. And
to all of our extended family out there with Mary Washington. Love you all. I wish you the best. Take care.
Thank you.